On today's episode, Melissa hates on moldy cheese, we reflect on the Olympics, and talk about telling good stories. It's the Sustainable Ministry Show, episode number 28. I avoid the goat cheese thing.
All right, man. I think we're ready.
All right, let's do this. We'll jump back in here. Well, hey, everybody. We are back with the Sustainable Ministry Show one more time. And this week we've got Melissa Rao and now joined with Stephen Ingram. Stephen, you have kind of been all over the place this summer. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your travels have, where they've taken you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, good to be back. Missed everyone and missed doing the podcast. But yeah, I had a great opportunity this summer to co-lead a group of about 26 from the church that I work at on a Journeys of Paul pilgrimage that took us all over the Mediterranean. We start off in Athens and spent a few days in Athens, Greece, where we went to some very important Pauline places, not the least of which was Mars Hill, where he went and talked to the Greek philosophers and saw some really cool things there, and then hopped on a boat because the best way to get around the Mediterranean was by boat, and Paul certainly knew that, except for when he shipwrecked. We're glad we didn't follow him in that journey. But we went to a number of the Greek Isles, and we were going to go to Ephesus, but because of some of the geopolitical stuff that's been happening over the past month or so, the boat decided not to go to Turkey. But we still ended up doing some really incredible Paul stops, including Sicily, and then ultimately ending up in Rome, where Paul was imprisoned and beheaded, and we went to all of the sites where all those things were happening, and is a really meaningful trip. It's about a 13-day long trip, and just a really cool time to connect more deeply with Scripture and with the forefathers of our faith. And so, yeah, it was an awesome time. But I hated missing the podcast. Well, I mean, it was okay. It was okay, but
Yeah, we considered rescheduling to an hour that would work for you, but
yeah. I was only about a 7-hour difference in time, and but my internet connection was not good. So,
Melissa and I confessed our jealousy, kind of to everyone else except you, last week. So let us confess our jealousy to you for this trip, for all of it. I mean, just even the fact that your wife got to join you.
Yeah,
on the trip,
my wife
and to be able to take that journey together.
Yeah, it was incredible. Just to spend that really sweet, good time together. And she and I, that's actually how we met, was on a 30-day trip to Jordan and Syria in college. That's how we fell in love. So travel's always been a really important part of our relationship and our lives and spirituality. So it was a really beautiful time to be able to spend with her.
Love it.
It's great.
Yeah.
And as a foodie, was there something new that you took in?
Not anything new, but way better. Way better. So one thing that was kind of new was fried feta. And I've had fried feta before. It's really gorgeous. You wrap it in phyllo dough. You flash fry it. But in Greece, they also will take Greek honey, which is gorgeous, and drizzle all over the fried feta. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
And in Greece, another great thing that I was really excited about going to Greece for is they do grilled octopus really beautifully, and it's very, very fresh. Like, it comes off the boat onto your plate. And if you're out there thinking, oh, gross, octopus is probably really rubbery, if you eat rubbery octopus, you're not eating good octopus. Octopus is a beautiful meat, especially when grilled Grecian style. So those are two of my highlights: fried feta with honey, and I ate a lot of grilled octopus. So yeah, it was fun.
I'm actually kind of frightened. Melissa, do you eat that stuff?
No, I mean, I love the cheese I love, but I really dislike the cheese I don't like.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You like feta?
I can handle a little bit of feta. It's not my favorite. I avoid the whole goat cheese thing. Feta I can handle. I know. I just don't like cheese. Blue cheese, gross. Can't handle blue cheese. Can't handle any of that stuff.
We just got to get you to France. We got to get you to France and just set you down at one of these tables with a million different kinds of cheeses.
Yeah, like the light cheeses are good, but like the dark, not good.
Okay. I don't know many dark cheeses.
Well, Gouda is darker. I like Gouda though, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, anyway,
you don't like cheese that has mold growing in it.
For sure.
Well, that's we gotta.
I'm like,
we gotta expand your palate. That's what we gotta.
All right, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll see you in a couple months. We'll work on that.
Or you can just have my portion.
Okay, that's cool too.
Okay.
So, welcome everybody to the New Cheese Podcast.
That's right.
We're kicking off today.
So good.
Yeah, I actually love cheese since we're talking about it. But so, Stephen, it sounds like a fantastic trip. Great opportunity for the summer and to lead other folks on the journey. I'm sure it was a blessing as much to you as it was to everybody else. The other thing that's been going on this summer that I have really been enjoying are the Summer Olympics down in Rio, which for all kinds of reasons could have been a disaster. But the stories, some of the relationships that are coming out of that we're hearing about and pictures that we're seeing are just fantastic. I love, I know I shared these with you earlier, but I love the picture of Usain Bolt, cheesing for the camera and what they say, like 2 seconds ahead of the pack. I love it because it's like, it was a symbol for ministry for me, being the people in the back of the pack. Often I feel that way. And then, of course, we're not talking about this today, but got me on a journey of like all the different places where I've looked at somebody else's ministry and thought, man, they got it going on. And then sometimes that, like at the cost of my own, right? And then the picture of the girl diving across the finish line, it's fantastic. The image of the North Korea, South Korea gymnasts taking a picture together, holding the peace sign up. So amazing. Yeah. And yet, what a statement to the face of politics there. It almost makes me feel like I hope the North Korea girl is going somewhere else on her journey home. But what are you guys enjoying about the Olympics? Melissa, you even mentioned you had a theory.
Well, you know what? I found it fascinating. So for anybody who's watching or listening, you have to understand that Bryant does this great job of preparing us for, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. And he said, how about when we open, we talk a little bit about the amazing Olympics and all these great things that are happening. And I thought, well, goodness, I have been watching the Olympics like 24/7. I mean, I watch the highlights in the evening and, some of the good gymnast thing. And I read the Skim article. I read the Skim every day. I love it, Monday through Friday. It talked about the dove over the finish line and actually stole, like honestly, she stole the gold from the I think it was an American, right?
Yeah.
But I thought, right? So she was the favorite person, and this gal like just dove for it, and she got it, and I got super excited. So I thought, how can I find something deep or wise or philosophical? And really, I was hitting a wall. But then I watched, I don't know if it was last night or the night before, Usain Bolt do his 200 meter. He was defending, right? And it was the semifinals. I think it was like 9th heat or something. And he took off, and of course he did his little corner thing, and he was out in front like he always is. But something that really stuck in my head was like, oh my gosh, the guy's looking around. He hasn't finished the race, but he was looking around to see who else was by him, how much he had to pull out, et cetera, to do it. And I thought, well, goodness gracious, if the gal who lost the gold had the mindfulness to be in the moment rather than looking at the finish line constantly, but be mindful about the present and looking around her, perhaps she would have, I don't know, gotten a little bit more oomph. And so that was just something that struck me, is like, goodness, are we so heavily into the race that we're not looking, that we've got blinders on and we're looking at the finish line instead of looking at what's going on around us. And so there you go. There's my philosophical, crazy deep thought for the day.
Actually love it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I'm, you know, we were gone for the first few days of the Olympics, coming back from the trip. But we hit it pretty hard when we came back. My wife and I are both, we love the Olympics and watched them pretty hardcore. For me, two things have kind of stood out, especially just in the fact that we're just, I think everyone, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, no matter where you are on the theological spectrum, I think everyone just feels a tension right now. I think there's just a general tension, anxiety, fearfulness. There's a lot of unknowns, and again, I think that's for everyone. That almost unifies us, which is kind of weird. And when we look at the Olympics, we see all these countries that have all their own backstories. We see all these people who have their own backstories, and yet they don't try to pretend like those backstories aren't there, but those backstories play a secondary role to this greater thing that they're being a part of. Countries who are literally at war with one another can get along with each other on a gymnastics floor. And there's something really special and beautiful about that. And every time, that's that kind of, that's that archaea narrative of the Olympics, right? That we can all come together for something greater than our own kind of personal issues or our own kind of societal issues. So that's one thing for me. I just love seeing that. I love seeing the girl from New Zealand and the girl from America who ran into each other. They both fell down. And the girl from New Zealand stayed back and helped the girl. The girl from America, her knee was blown out, and she helped her all the way across the finish line. And there's just goodness there. And so it's not even about going to the games and being together to who's the best. There's just a goodness that's represented in the games. The second thing, and they always get me, and I sit there and I cry like a baby, is this iPhone commercial. And it's not, I don't cry like a baby, an iPhone commercial. But sometimes, but this iPhone commercial where it's got pictures of people from all over the world taken on iPhones, but in the background, Maya Angelou is reading her poem about how she's traveled all over the world and seen all different kinds of people, and lovers will lie in the bed beside each other yet thinking different things. All this beautiful thing about how different and how diverse and how broad and how beautiful the world is. But at the end of the day, there's something that we have in common, and it's our humanity, and that we are one family. And man,
amen to that. I know.
I just want to take that in every pulpit in America, play that poem, play that video, and say, okay, now discuss for the next 30 minutes how we can live into that narrative of the gospel. So that's my Olympics.
More alike than unalike, my friends. That right? Yeah. Love it.
And she does it twice at the end.
I know.
Just in case you didn't get it the first time.
So good.
There's goodness there. There's goodness.
Yeah, and I think that's how we can, really sum up the Olympics this year. It's just full of goodness. The other night, Usain Bolt was being interviewed about his race. Yeah. And then the American anthem, right? Like the medal ceremony starts to take place. He shushes the reporter and turns his back to her. She turns around and still is talking, and he shushes her again, puts his hand on his heart, and pauses to listen to another country's anthem and to honor the people who were being honored on the medal stand. Stories like that where we just recognize the deep sense of respect for other people, lifting up other people in the midst of that. To see the folks who, of course you're going to lose against Michael Phelps. This is not a surprise. But then to see folks congratulate him on this achievement that he's made, the support that has been built up just about throughout the Olympics for the folks who are winning and the folks who are behind. Right. It hasn't been about I'm better than you this year. It has been about we are in this together. and it is a good thing that we're here. Maya Dorado, another swimmer on the U.S. team, she was being interviewed and said, "This does not define me. Swimming does not define me. There is more to my life than this," and wasn't saying it as like demeaning to the Olympics, but that she will not be defined by the single thing that she does, but will be defined by who she is. And those are two totally different things. She, herself is proclaimed Christian and claims that for her own. And so I think we can embrace that as well to say, okay, so like she defines herself through her faith and not necessarily the thing that she does, which is just beautiful. And that's a whole nother, a whole nother journey, a whole nother conversation. But so as you guys look at that and we see these stories being told in the Olympics, and we see the pictures and the imagery, all this good stuff that's going on, and we're hearing it, what can we adopt from that? I wonder, like as a church, as a ministry, what are the things we can adopt and take away from that would be helpful and beneficial to the places that we serve?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's not just in our churches, right? I feel like in today's time and in this age, I know we're not supposed to talk about politics, but I feel like politics is such a thing in every sense of our life. And we're inundated by these politically charged messages. We've got the election, the national, the presidential election going on, and then even at a more local dynamic within our own churches. I feel like, people have an idea or they have, an ethos, if you will. And whether that's personal or whether that's global in their local network, I think people are handling it. I feel like we act like big babies sometimes, and we forget to mutually respect one another. We forget that we are supposed to see Christ in each other. And I feel like the Olympics is such an amazing example of how we can all be different, all be diverse, but still be respectful and love one another through it. I feel like, goodness gracious, isn't that why Jesus died for us? Was to show his love so that we can share it with others. I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, I think there's a lot we can learn from it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, there were two backstories to athletes to that. One was a personal backstory. The other was more of a societal narrative backstory. That really message that we can bring back is the message of hope, and also sort of the challenge of having a long view. A longer view of history and a longer view of God's story. The two stories, one is not as much a personal story, but the African American girl, I cannot think of her name to save my life, Simone, is one of the Simones who won the Biles. Not Simone Biles, the one who won the swimming.
Yeah.
Simone.
Okay. Oh yes,
I can't
yes.
remember her last name. But there's been this meme going around online, and it was a backstory from the American commentators. It wasn't too long ago that a pool was drained just because an African American girl touched her toe in the water, and now we have the first African American gold medalist in a swimming competition. That's a long view story of hope. To say that we as a nation and we as a world have come in the span of 50 years, have come a pretty long way in some instances, and that we celebrate her. That there's a beautiful piece to that. The other one is a story from South African guy who set the world record, not the Olympic record, but the world record just a couple nights ago in one of his races. Again, I cannot think of his name to save my life. But his mother was a premier athlete in South Africa. during apartheid. And she was one of the top athletes in the entire country. And because of apartheid, I don't know if you guys know, but if you were a minority, actually they were majority, but if you were not a part of the ruling class during apartheid, you were not allowed to compete in athletic events outside of the country. You could only compete inside the country. And so she was a premier athlete who never to the Olympic athlete, never got to go and never got to compete. Yet her son, just a generation later, was able to go compete, represent his country of South Africa, who had oppressed his mother, and win not only the gold medal, but achieve a world record in the name of his country. For me, I think in our current state of fear, anxiety, all these things, I think hope and long view are two important things that we can bring back to our congregations.
I love it. I love it. And it makes me think too of the refugee team, a group of people who their countries, for whatever reason, whether the country has said it or whether they have felt it, they no longer belong. And so here's this Olympics that is founded and based in countries competing in sports and athletics, and folks who don't belong to any of those places no longer have a home or a place that embraces them. And we say, here's a place where you belong. Here's a place where you're still a part of who we are and what we do. And that's another story of hope that I think, like, man, if we could embrace that, like, as a country, as a people, as a church, as a global nation, to be able to say, this is a place where you belong. That starts to look, I just think, like, that starts to look like the church. And in some ways, the Olympics may look more like the church this year than some churches do. There's so much that we could have focused on with the Olympics. And you hear the stories, the green pool, of course, like, you've heard about that. You've heard about the trash in the water. You've heard about all this other negative stuff, but those don't seem to be the stories that are being told and talked about and shared. The things that you have lifted up, some of the pictures we see and people coming together, whether they've busted their knee on the track or they're supporting each other in their achievements. These are the stories that are being told in the
Thank
goodness.
So,
absolutely.
hats off to the media. Hats off to the media for actually, dwelling on the good stuff rather than all the negative stuff for once.
Yeah.
We need it so much.
Yeah.
And so maybe one other thought then, one of the things I'm wondering is then for the church, how does the church embrace the good stories? Because it's easy sometimes for us to get stuck on, well, nobody's coming, or if we had only done this, and, we've never tried that before and we're not going to try it here. Like, rather than embracing those stories, how does the church move from that to a place where we're embracing the good stories that are taking place within our congregations? How does that happen?
Well, go ahead, Stephen, please.
Well, I was going to say, I just having come off this Journeys of Paul trip, we spent about 4 months in preparation reading Paul's letters, especially the ones to the places that we were going to go, and watching the development of the first church. This was not a place that had positive social ramifications. You didn't go there to meet new business partners and to be to fit in better in your community. This was a place where you had real persecution, as are many churches in the world right now. But this is a place that you really took risk to be a part of this place. When we were in Rome, we went just outside the walls of Rome to the catacombs, and one of the catacombs we were in had over 20,000 people buried in it. I mean, it was like unbelievable, huge underground tunnels. And in one of the areas, I think it was back in the 3rd century, they were meeting in that area, and Roman guards came down and slaughtered them. They were Christians meeting in this one place, came down and slaughtered them all. They didn't dwell. If you notice the letters and the things that we see from the first church, they didn't dwell on the Roman persecution. They didn't dwell on, we don't have buildings, we don't have spaces. They told stories of hope. And if they can tell stories of hope when they are a very small number, when there are very few of them and they're being hunted in certain instances, then I think we can take courage in that and find it in ourselves to refuse to live into a negative narrative and look at the blessings and look at the people that are around us. So I take my cue from the first century church in that.
I too think dwelling on the negative isn't important, but I feel sometimes churches don't even necessarily know how to celebrate the good stuff that's going on. What ways are some practical things that churches can do to get the word out and to celebrate the good stuff that God is doing in and through the ministry of the church? You've got the easy stuff, right? You've got newsletters, you've got church announcements, you've got all those kind of cliche duh kind of things, right? I say duh, and it's not necessarily a duh too. So I don't mean to criticize or point out the obvious, because some churches don't even necessarily understand that they can do those things. But I saw one church not too long ago do the coolest thing. They had a brag book that they had at coffee hour, and they had 2 or 3 of these things out in the parish hall that they had, their community area, and they had these brag books so that people could put news clippings in or pictures taken at church functions, and they ended up looking like these scrapbooks. Some pages were really elaborately decorated. Other pages just had a little, like a sticky note about what the picture was about. But it's so cool because this brag book would then make its way around the room during coffee hour. And I just thought it was the neatest thing. They were obviously sharing their stories about who they are and what they're doing. And it was just a cool way to circulate good news, if you will. I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, I even just love pictures and photographs, but not just any, and not always in a frame. Like my favorite are the canvas photographs you can order from like Snapfish and Walmart and Sam's and Costco and all these sort of places. You can get them pretty cheap, but when they stand like 3 or 4 inches off of the wall, it just gives it some depth. And I think every church probably has a couple pictures that they just love that are fantastic, and getting those printed and hung in a way where people can just observe intentionally the smiling faces that the church has been embracing, whether they're members or on a mission trip or what have you, but being really intentional about what those pictures look like, and then putting them in a place where it's visible. It just creates a sense of celebration. Also have just observed that often churches are telling stories. The stories are limited because they're telling the good stories that are happening like within the walls of the church. And not always the stories of the lives of the members of the church.
Right.
And so like those people are doing awesome things outside of the church. And there's probably things in the midst of that to celebrate. And those are stories that can be told as well.
For sure.
And embraced in all those kind of duh places, if you will.
Well, I think it's helping members. I mean, I think it's one of the opportunities we have is helping members understand that the work of God doesn't just happen in the 4 walls of the church. The work of God's happening in their businesses, in their jobs, in their homes, with their children, their friends, families, and enemies, and everything in between, and to see everything through that lens. So then they can bring. I mean, that's what the first church did, right? They brought back the stories of how they were seeing God outside of those catacombs or outside of those initial walls, and that's pretty awesome. So to help people see their life through that lens is an opportunity I think we have.
Yeah, I had I know a church that I was working with down in Alabama. They're a smaller church community, and they have a very kind of small youth contingent and a kind of an older adult contingent. And kind of just like what you said, it's not just about the stuff that's happening at the church, but it's the people who are the church. And I feel sometimes we've compartmentalized our Sunday morning lives versus everything else. And so this one church focused on the everything else. And they had their youth kids, which was like 3 or 4 youth. Every month they would pick an older person in the church and kind of interview them about what they do during the week, how they came to be a member of their church, what they love to do, what their hobbies are, what their interests are, et cetera, et cetera. And then the youth actually wrote up kind of like a little interview thing and a news story. So it's celebrating the youth as being vital part of the parish, right, or the church. And this was an Episcopal church, by the way, so I'm saying parish. But it was a great way to get the youth mingling with the older folks and then sharing what they learned with the rest of the church. It was such a really, really cool thing that they did.
There's so many good ideas. And I think pastors hear these things and sometimes pass them along, and sometimes it just requires a little more intentionality to say, okay, like listen to this conversation that these folks were having, listen to the questions that are happening. Let's observe like how these folks interacted outside of the church and share that and be intentional about sharing it. And it doesn't always have to be the happy, cheery stories, I think, but sometimes the heartbreaking stories that get back to that long view that Stephen was talking about earlier. Sometimes those heartbreaking stories have so much joy in the end of them that those need to be celebrated and told as well. So please embrace good stories in your churches, in your ministry, in your life, in your families. Tell the good stories. Tell the good stories and keep those going. How can folks keep up with you as we get into the school year and this new rhythm of life that we sometimes call fall? Where can people keep up with you guys?
Go.
Oh, okay, I'll go. So I was being honest, I was gonna say ladies first, go Melissa. Whatever. Reject it, whatever. So I'm still blogging, not quite as regular here lately, just because I've been, like I said, been traveling and I'm in a new position, same church but new position. But I am blogging at 12 Stone Spirituality, 12stonespirituality.com, and I'm doing some blogging over there. I'm going to be speaking at a few conferences already this fall, I think 2 or 3. And I'll give you some updates on those and their dates and where they'll be probably on the next one. But yeah, and of course, you can always email me at Stephen@ymarchitects.com. Or sorry, Stephen@ministryarchitects.com. Whoa.
Yeah, right?
Whoa.
Also, I'm Melissa Rao. You can reach me at on email, melissa@ministryarchitects.com. You can also look me up on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and, dare I say it, even Snapchat. I cringed, but man, they've got the best filters.
Have you done
really
the puppy
cool
dog ears?
Oh my gosh, have you done the giraffe?
I'm not actually on Snapchat, but I've seen it.
So good. It's so good.
Oh, folks, you can find me, probably easiest way, track me down is on Facebook at Bryant Johnson, or email bryant@ministryarchitects.com, or the other places Melissa mentioned minus Snapchat. I just haven't gotten there yet. And probably by the time I do, it'll be gone. So thanks so much, you guys. Thanks for participating. And to those of you that are listening, don't forget to subscribe. Do that in iTunes. Click the little subscribe button. Do it on YouTube. Click the subscribe button there. And if you're enjoying this, share it with your friends, other people that you know. We certainly would appreciate that. Melissa, Stephen, thank you so much.
Ha ha ha!